Hey everyone, Shew here, founder of Crypto Consulting Institute. I'm really excited to be bringing our guest on the show today, Julia Buchholz. For me, the crypto space has developed and increased at an absolutely rapid rate, as everyone would know, as the highest performing asset class in history. Now, a specific area grew in 2021 and absolutely took off, and that was the NFT space. Now, whilst most people see NFTs, they look at NFTs as more so digital art, there is so much that's happening in this realm that is flooding into every single asset class out there. In 2020, there was only $95 million worth of NFTs that were traded. In 2021, it was 25 billion. Now, I foresee this is a space that's just getting warmed up because of how it's going to tap into different markets. One area that I'm particularly interested in, and why I've brought Julia on the show today, because she is an absolute expert and world leader on this space, is the fractionalization of property. As we know, the property market has absolutely boomed since COVID into the multi-trillions. And with that happening, it's made it somewhat inaccessible for a lot of people, but there's also a need for revolutionizing that old and inundated space, the same as the financial world. So really keen to hear from Julia today. I'll be asking some questions for my own knowledge, but also to help educate new people that see and hear about the fractionalization of property, don't quite get it, and want to learn more. So I'm really excited. Thank you, Julia, for taking the time out to be on this show with us.
Thank you for having me today.
Awesome. So a very quick bit of background, and I can drop a link into Julia's background as well in the comments section. But Julia is the CMO of Blocksquare. So Blocksquare is really helping to digitalize or transition through the NFT and tokenization of the real estate realm. To me, this is the biggest thing. That's why I've reached out to Julia and I was like, hey, please come on the show. She's also the regional co-chair of Fibree as well, which is a global organization helping with prop tech, technology in the property real estate world. And also her background in crypto started as the co-founder and CEO currently of Tecstack, which I understand is more so around helping and consulting to businesses, helping them transition into the crypto and blockchain world. Is that correct, Julia?
Yeah, that's correct. And we specialize basically for the real estate industry. So we run CPD courses and so on here in Western Australia together with the Real Estate Institute of WA.
Awesome. So as you can see, Julia is an absolute expert on this space. So let's start unpacking this. Let's have a bit of fun and really start to understand some of the core things. So for someone listening, if this is maybe the first time they've heard of tokenization, can you give people a real high level explanation as to what does this actually mean for the property world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, property, as we all know, by nature is the biggest asset class in the world, and everyone tries to get in, but not everyone can afford to get in, and also not everyone can get a mortgage or wants to get a mortgage. And by nature, the buying and trading of real estate is quite expensive. It takes a long time. There's a lot of middlemen involved. And transparency is also sometimes an issue. Like there's a lot of fraud happening in the industry as well, for that real estate agencies experience as well. So due diligence is really important of, ownership papers, titles, and all of that kind of stuff. There's various ways how blockchain can basically help the industry to make things a little bit different that they have been using, than they have been doing for all this many years. And this is basically where we focus on with Blocksquare. We said blockchain adoption will always be a bit hard for the industry because if you try to tokenize the way how it is right now, for example, it's a very expensive exercise because of the many layers we have in the usual system there, and also a day-to-day trading of real estate, for example, it's pretty much impossible because the progresses are so long. So when we use blockchain, we basically just look into how can the technology help to make things just a bit different, and how could we innovate that space. And what we did is we developed, since 2018, actually, that's when Blocksquare was founded, we developed an infrastructure for the real estate industry to use to help in this process and the whole transition to Web3, basically.
Yeah, awesome. So it's more so, would you say, setting a standard or being a consultant to help that transition from the outdated a liquid system into a new way of thinking and operating, utilizing the blockchain technology? Is that really where Blocksquare comes into play?
Yeah, also a little bit, look, the business of a real estate agency or financial service provider, or whoever wants to operate a marketplace basically for real estate, their business is normally not to run a blockchain technology company, right? Their business is finding buyers and sellers and matching them. So they should focus on that, where they have all the experience, the expertise, and instead of basically first creating a platform and spending like $1 million of doing that, and everything, run that alone is a full-time business basically to set that up. So in the past, when projects try to tokenize real estate, it was a very expensive exercise for them, because they not only needed the experts and from real estate and the brokers and everyone involved in that, they also needed an entire tech team.
Yeah.
And we all know how expensive a blockchain developer is these days. They're in high demand, and they have pretty good rates. And imagine you have to hire, I don't know, 5 of them or something to actually create your platform for it, so you can actually offering tokenized real estate. That alone, to run a tech company, is a pretty big commitment, and it's a full-time job for everyone in there. So what we saw with Blocksquare is we would need to develop a solution that works more like a software as a service solution, and which works on a subscription basis, and which can be white labeled by any business who would like to operate a real estate marketplace. And so they can get started in a couple of weeks instead of a couple of years, and they're ready to go, to focus on the business that they have, and that is onboarding real estate and bring people to the platform who hopefully buy the tokens. So that is basically the core solution that Blocksquare is offering.
Yeah, kind of in simple terms, and it might not necessarily be the best example, but you might say the Ethereum of the real estate world. People are tap into the technology that you guys have built and utilize that. So it's quicker, easier, it's already done for them. So do you see, how far away are we from making this a lot more mainstream for real estate companies to be on board with this? Do you think there's a number of hurdles for them psychologically to jump over? Or do you think that from your experience of what you found, people are aware of blockchain technology, they kind of know that they need it, but they don't quite understand it? Because I should imagine, like what we do over here, a lot of it is education, helping people to see how amazing this opportunity is, but they're not quite there yet because they're stuck in the traditional system.
Absolutely. I mean, education is key, and that's why basically with Tecstack we focus on that side, but also in Blocksquare. Every Thursday, for example, we run a podcast which is called Block Chat, which is awesome for everyone, accessible on YouTube or Twitter and all these other channels we have. And these are pure educational sessions about DeFi, real estate, tokenization, and where we just really discuss topics related to that. And people really have opportunity to learn through that, through discussion. The entire tokenization space is constantly changing, as we know, not only in real estate, also, with all the new solutions that are coming up all the time. Regulatory is changing all the time as well. We don't know, every country is different as well. And then also we have, of course, the regulations in real estate as well. So now we basically have to match these two completely different industries, and we have to find solutions that are creating not only real estate tokens, but making them legally binding in the real world. That is probably the main aspect of it as well, to give this so it's in the real world enforceable, basically.
Yeah.
Legally.
So let's talk a little bit more about the regulation side of things. Not in depth. I'm not asking you to reel off necessarily the legal law book on that, but regulation in crypto, full stop, is obviously an area of uncertainty, concern, risk for investors. How is that impacting you guys? What's been your journey and experience? Because obviously you're based in Perth right now. So what's been your experience when trying to integrate this into the real world? Has it been an easier process? Have they been quite open to transitioning NFTs, fractionalization of property with NFTs, or where have you landed with that so far, Julia?
So first of all, I would so what we do in Blocksquare is we don't create NFTs, we create asset tokens, like property tokens, and simply because it's like a you can trade them, but we create all the information we need about the properties. They're all stored on IPFS files as well, so all the information is there. We just started back in 2018 to create them more as asset tokens on ERC20 instead of basically using creating the NFTs. Maybe in the future we will move into that space as well, can be, but right now what we focus on really is adoption instead of creating more new ways, basically. However, the way how everything is structured gives you all the information that you need basically to know about this real estate. So in terms of here in Australia, real estate companies or agents creating marketplaces, it has been really slow in Australia, just because they're talking to one lawyer and they say, I don't really understand this technology. I really need to start looking into that. And they're talking to the next, no, you cannot do it this way because it's not the traditional way, it's something new. So it's really hard to get the head around it. But then there is some lawyers who really into that topic and really looked into that technology and in the new ways. And they're saying, this is really interesting because you really create something like a new way, basically. So
like John, I guess, John Basilios, I believe is on Fibree with you guys, isn't he? So he's quite advanced.
He's very advanced in that ways. We mainly work with here in Perth, for example, we have Satoshi Legal with Ellie Bernstein. For example, Josh Hunt, these guys. And then we have as well Simon Owen. We used to have him on a blog chat as well about real estate tokenization in Australia. So these guys are very, very familiar with the Blocksquare ecosystem. And we normally consult with them, for example, because they know that technology really, really well. And so what we are trying to do is we're not trying to fractionalize a title, for example, or a REIT, for example, because when you do that, you're touching basically the traditional instruments, and you wouldn't change anything on the structure in terms of stamp duty or you cannot just trade that every single day, and you cannot, there's a lot of regulatory regulations where you basically have to keep in mind this is how it's regulating the real estate industry. What we do at Blocksquare is a new where we more or less creating a digital twin of the property, but because we're tokenizing the corporate resolution of the company that owns that property. This then means that we create a legally binding smart legal contract basically about that.
Yeah.
And because we have that real world legal contract of the corporate resolution, that also then sits as a caveat over the property. So we allow the tokenization directly of the asset and not of a fund. That
Got
is
you.
the main issue.
So just quickly, would the process be, let's say I owned a property, I wanted to sell it, I could sell it peer-to-peer via a smart contract that would be stamped into the blockchain. The money would get held in escrow. Once the asset's released, the money would get released to me. Is that the simplicity of the process, or is it a bit more complex than that?
No, it's probably even easier. So,
oh, wonderful. That's good.
If you do it, the way how we develop the tokenization at Blocksquare is that we are using Blocksquare more as a liquidity pool, not liquidity pool, liquidity tool.
Yep.
So let's say you are the owner. You would normally sell the property because you, for example, need cash, or maybe there's big renovations coming up and you cannot even afford that, or you want to pay off your mortgage, maybe, like there's any kind of different reasons why you would sell a property, but you would normally like to keep it. So we allow the transfer of legally binding ownership, or let's call it the rights of revenue that property generates. And this is basically what we tokenize. And we say, all right, you know what, Joe, you need $100,000, your property is worth $1 million, no problem, we tokenize 10% and we offer that to the market. And so now you can receive peer-to-peer funding from the market without a bank involved.
Awesome.
And you don't need, to qualify for the normal banking. And a lot of crypto people, for example, they might not even qualify for the normal mortgages or whatsoever. So it's a good way for that as well. But at the same time, you receive the rights of the income of the property, and that's why you invested into an investment property. We're talking here about investment properties, for example, commercial properties, Airbnbs, can be even like normal residential homes that are rented out. Anything that's generating revenue in terms of rental income, for example, this could be tokenized the way how we do it. Okay. Otherwise, you would need to do like the normal. If you want to sell your home completely, then yes. So there's always, those who want to sell the property because they want to get rid of it, and there's others who actually want to sell the property because of other reasons, cash flow, for example, or they want to change the way how the ownership of the property is structured, pay out the loans, that kind of stuff. So that is basically what we focus on. I would say, imagine you own an Airbnb, and or you go to you rent this Airbnb over the weekend, and you just absolutely love it, and you think like, oh my god, this would be great, hey, and we just paid like $1,500 for this weekend to stay here. Like, that is just such a cash flow. This is like so good. Imagine they hang the little QR code on the fridge, and that says, would you like to own a piece of this property? Scan here. And you can go in there and you can buy whatever, $500 worth of that. And then from anyone else in the future who comes and stays and spends the weekend there, you receive a small portion based on your ownership in the property.
Right. So you can fractionalize then the ownership of the property, because from when you were talking before, I thought you were creating one digital print of one house, but it sounds like you can fractionalize it a lot more down than that. What I had in my mind is that you can completely fractionalize. Let's say you've got $1 million property, you fractionalize it into 1,000 pieces and then sell each of those individual 1,000 pieces. So each person has a $10,000 share. and then you get the benefit of the income and the capital gains if you choose to sell it in the future. So that's exactly what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, so we even divided into 100,000 tokens.
Yeah, or further, yeah.
That's our, like we always say, 100,000, and then each token has exactly the value of that property. So the value of the property has been created based on a real valuation, like like you would get a professional valuation done. Then it's being assessed by the marketplace operating team, looking into what has been the latest transactions on the market, like are we agreeing with this valuation, or would we evaluate it a little bit different based on this and that. Anyway, so then there comes the approval of the certified partner, who's basically who did the evaluation, and then it basically goes into the tokenization process, and then this tokenization process is done by the Blocksquare team and on the Blocksquare technology, basically as a done for you service for the marketplace operator.
Yeah, fantastic. That makes a lot of sense in terms of the value to investors going forward, because they can get the real estate income and also the capital gain increase as well. So all of that information gets stamped onto a blockchain, which is obviously accessible in real time. And that's the thing that I love about blockchain technology, being able to use platforms like Glassnode and see in live time what's happening in the market, what's the true valuation. Where property, it can be a lot more distorted and difficult to get the real valuation of your property at any point in time, unless you get independent people to come in and assess the value of your property, which even then it can be a bit ambiguous. So how far away are we from all assets in the property world being on a blockchain where you can just look up and say, how much is my property worth? And it's going to go bang. Based on all of this data, this is exactly how much your property is worth. Are we quite far away from that big transition onto the blockchain? Like, are we talking in the next 5 years? Are we talking potentially less? How quick do you think the uptake of this is? Because obviously we saw the transition of NFTs from 95 million to 25 billion in a year. So I think in the crypto sphere, people are very open, but the traditional sphere, it's still a bit of a pulling teeth exercise. So how far are we between that full transition of all property is on a blockchain, or the majority of property is on a blockchain? What do you see the timeline for that based on your experience in the field so far?
I think we're far away. I think
10
we're far
years
away
or?
in terms of, well, it's very hard to say. Let's say, for example, 10 years. But what I see is we're talking here different levels, because one way is, all right, you know, some are doing it already, and the real estate industry really is waking up. You can see it we have been on several real estate seminars this year as well, where we, some our CEO Dennis Petrovic, he, for example, is he's the board member on Fibree and part of the founding team basically there as well, and he often gets invited to speak and facilitate real estate conversations on conventions about tokenization. And he said, compared to the last years, for example, out of sudden last year, we saw a big uptake of people who actually attended these conversations. Where we were thinking there's maybe 10 people coming or something, and then the room was just packed. So that basically shows the interest of the leaders in the real estate industry really to learn about this. But then what we noticed is, like, when they then see that they have to think differently when they want to bring real estate on the blockchain to make it worthwhile. And we're talking fractionalized real estate. We're not talking bringing titles on the blockchain. I think that's a completely different story than talking about fractionalized real estate. And that because it is there's so many regulation problems we would have if we would try to do it with traditional real estate. It needs innovators. it needs risk takers, it needs change makers, and you know how it is. That is that even 1% of industry experts who are doing this? That starts very slow. So what we're seeing lately is at Blocksquare that we actually have much more interest in marketplace from marketplace operators who are going on info calls with us and seeking consultancy about that, like much more than we had last year. Awesome. And definitely the trend is going in that direction. That's really interesting. Sometimes it's developers, sometimes it's online marketers, for example, who are really good in online marketing and want to start a business like that. Like all kind of different nature, basically, of people who are interested in that. So we see the demand is completely changing. And myself, I went to the Global Blockchain Summit in Bangkok just in December. And it was all about asset tokenization. Like there were, trends for next year, asset tokenization, metaverse, infrastructure to solve problems in businesses as well who are highly untransparent and so on. So the trend is going in that direction, but you need to be a risk taker if you want to innovate a space. Everyone who is creating a DAO or a DeFi platform or whatsoever, is in that creative mindset basically, and wants to change something. And the same as in real estate as well.
Yeah, and they see the value in it. Fortune favors the brave, but you need to try and transition into it in a way. Well, from my experience, from a place of alignment, you actually want to serve and help create something better because you see the challenges, but you're actually delivering some perceived value in the future, and you get handsomely rewarded for that as well. So what I'm really interested in, sorry, I was just going to break down 3 different profiles of people that might be watching this. So the first and most obvious one is if someone's in the real estate game watching this. Now, there's probably 2 schools of thought, or a few actually. One would be, oh shit, if I don't do something now and make significant change, then I'm going to get left behind in the real estate game. The other one might be, well, this is too far away, I don't need to do anything and I can just sit where I am. And the third school of thought is this crypto stuff is just mumbo jumbo still, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So if you're a real estate agent right now, maybe you run your own practice, your firm, whatever it is, what would your advice be? What are the clear benefits of being able to integrate into the blockchain, and what do you see of the risks if they don't change?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we notice from speaking with a lot of different real estate agents is that they're running the normal buyer's agency, for example. They're not doing the normal real estate transactions. That's their core business. That will not go away for a long time. At the same time, they also have all this expertise about real estate that can help to develop real estate on blockchain. So for them, if they're really up to date with what's happening in the industry, there's a lot of opportunity coming as well in terms of not only running a Web3 business in that space, also consulting in that space, and just basically create your product offering. That's probably the best way how I would do it. Because if you think about, you're getting your clients and you're trying to find people who want to sell their properties, and you do your door knocking and everything they're trying to do. And not everyone wants to sell. But now imagine you have a different conversation with people who are saying, you know what, we don't want to sell, but actually we need money. So, or you can offer it, but do you need some more cash flow? Like it could be like a second product you can offer them. So if you have because it's a completely different product, if you see like that, if you tokenize or fractionalize ownership and you run a marketplace for that, and then there I can keep my property. I don't have to sell it, but I can sell just 10%, use it to refinance my property, for example. Or maybe I want to build a granny flat, and I can extract the liquidity that I have now in mind and use that to actually then further develop that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Also for public spaces, community engagement, international funding. So we actually did a blog chat about that as well. Let's say you're living in Australia, you're originally coming from, I don't know, Albania, and you would like to support your family who still lives there, but maybe the village is a little bit run down, or there is a new school, they actually need to do crowdfunding for new schools and so on. Imagine the governments would start using it and would say, all right, we do a public offering to the community because we have to actually build a school. We want to build a school here, or we need to renovate the school. And now I can be overseas and I can actually say, that's interesting. I'm going to send money over there, and I donate it basically, but I actually have my skin in the game there and actually own part of it as well. So even tokenization can be a way to completely change how we engage in our own communities or in our communities at home to support our families, for example. So we can make real estate more global. We can participate in different markets much easier. And
more transparent.
We can make it more transparent, fast.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing.
And what we didn't even talk about yet is that on the in the Blocksquare marketplaces, for example, there's the feature of secondary markets trades as well. So I can purchase the real estate, I can hold it, and then I say, you know what, I want to sell it now, but the property hasn't been sold yet. So the owner is not buying back my tokens because it's my tokens now, but I can put it on the secondary market now, and someone else can come in and buy it. And now what we can do is we can even create a secondary market valuation in real time on what the people are willing to pay for ownership of that property and the income that property is generating.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the challenge with a lot of people is properties are really illiquid. And as we experienced, the RBA said we're not going to increase interest rates in 2022. And what did they do? They increased interest rates. For a lot of people, they got priced out of their own property, couldn't afford the mortgage, and then they had to almost panic sell, which the market hasn't or has held up fairly good, but at some point it might not. And for a lot of people, to be able to sell a property can take months in a process. So I think the ability to have instant liquidity is amazing for a lot of people to relieve that pressure and not have to completely offload their family home, as an example, if that's what it is for them. So I think that's really an incredible market where you don't have to go to a bank and go through all the bureaucratic red tape to try and get something out of it, where they will just take your keys if they want to, which I know happened a lot in the US through 2008, 2009. So that's really interesting. If we look at a different type of profile now, let's say I'm a property developer. Now, as a property developer, obviously they have to use real estate companies if they build a big project and they want to offload. They might sell some off of the plan as well. How do you see the benefit to someone who's a property developer in this blockchain realm? Can they maybe tokenize the entire property and maybe get more liquidity for the build ahead of time? Where do you see the value for those guys in this? Where's the cost saving potentially for them? And where's maybe the perceived risk if they don't jump onto the blockchain as well? I know that was a lot of questions, so I can break that down again. But if you want to talk through any ideas that you've got around that, I'm really interested to hear.
I think property developers have, it depends on what stage they basically do the development or the tokenization of the development. And we say in general, it probably makes most sense to tokenize a build-to-let concept. So if you're building it and then your plan is to rent it out, so you have then that revenue that's coming in basically. And then you could basically operate in different milestones with your financing. So you can basically say, all right, first I go, with my normal traditional funding methods, and then maybe the first apartment is now ready to rent out, for example. Now I'm gonna tokenize that, and then I use the funds to basically finance the, I don't know, all the interior of the next apartment, for example, or however the building structure is. There's so many different ways how you can tokenize, and also how you would structure it legally and all of that. So we normally say the easiest way is probably to focus, at least with using Blocksquare and that financial advantage as well, because it's much more affordable to tokenize that way than other ways. You would probably want to focus on properties that are already generating revenue, or where you can build up because you already get these revenues, because you need that revenues to keep your token holders happy, right? Because you're not offering a fixed percentage or something. You're offering basically revenue of that. Now you might structure it in a way that you say they're going to make the money from the subdivision, for example. Let's say you own already the land, and then you tokenize the land, and your financial forecast is so much after you subdivide it, and then you're selling it, for example. So it depends what you include in your token offering. This you can always structure it that way. Now, what we said earlier, we want to make it very easy. People can just, they need money, they want to extract it off their property, they need a platform where they can go, and it should be fast that they're getting it out. What we developed in Blocksquare as well is not only basically the business opportunity for the agencies and how they can run it. We also developed a DeFi bridge for real estate, and that is called Ocean Point. That is a decentralized real estate fund, and that uses in the backend the Blocksquare marketplace and tokenization protocol. But it has it's basically almost like the entire Blocksquare ecosystem from all the different marketplace operators. They all then come back into the DeFi bridge, because imagine you have what we know from DeFi, from other normal DeFi platforms, is you have your governance pool, for example, right? In Ocean Point, you can basically go buy our token, Blocksquare token BST. You buy that on Uniswap, and you say, you know what, I want to be part of this decentralized real estate fund, this global decentralized real estate fund. I just put it in the governance pool, which gives me a share in there, and now this governance pool is staking BST for me, and I'm getting my return from there, right? Now, if you are an asset owner, you own real estate, you can say, all right, you know what? I have had never anything to do with crypto. This is far too complicated for me. I don't want to buy any cryptocurrency or something like that. I don't want to lose that. Or maybe I don't have money, can be as well. But I would like to participate in this, and I want to give it a goal, and I want to learn how to do this. So what you can do is you can basically submit your property with a valuation. The valuation, everything is getting assessed. Your proof of title is being approved. Your financing, like everything is getting done like in the normal real world process if you want to sell property, for example. But then the property is being issued the 100,000 tokens, basically.
Yep.
We always just issue on Ocean Point in by default 10%, so it would be 10,000 of your property tokens. Now, let's say your property tokens are worth now $100,000, and you use these property tokens and you stake it in the asset pool, and now you start earning BST. So for the first time, you now earn a cryptocurrency that is hopefully generating you good profit, depending where the price is going in the future and so on. But you now, on top of your ownership, on top of your rental that you have, you now receive for the first time a third income stream. You didn't have to buy anything, you didn't have to sell anything. You just had to learn how to set up an Ethereum wallet connected to the platform and just give that a go, basically.
What are the risks involved with that? Like if I'm an investor and I wanted to go through that process and start staking through the platform, what do I need to consider? What do I need to be aware of? Because obviously in the staking realms, and I know this is very different because it's more so linked to an actual physical asset. A lot of people have been burnt recently with BlockFi, Genesis, all the Celsius and so on. So I know that the mindset for a lot of people is when they hear the word staking now, it's a bit like, oh, so can you kind of jump over that psychological barrier and help people to really understand what's the risk and how is this different to that of staking a traditional cryptocurrency?
So first of all, I would like to say that Ocean Point is completely built, technology-wise, completely built decentralized. And that even starts from using for the entire data structure. Now we're using Flux. Then we have all this set of smart contracts. So we have built it from the ground, decentralized. Yeah. There's not a central server. However, of course, and we're also in the transition to that it becomes a DAO. So we are building up over time that more and more governance is being basically taken over by the members.
Awesome.
But we start that from the Blocksquare company, but over the years it will transition more and more the more we grow. So that I think is already a main difference as well. Then secondly is all the assets are kept in your wallet. You don't deposit anything to Blocksquare. It stays in your MetaMask or in your Trust wallet, whatever wallet you choose. Thirdly is, again, if you choose to submit the value of your property, you didn't buy anything. So worst case scenario would be you're earning BST into the wallet you submitted. You're earning, and one day you're like, oh my God, I cannot remember my seed phrase from my MetaMask. And then what would happen is, worst case scenario, you cannot access the earned BST. But you also didn't buy anything. So you didn't lose anything, right? Or maybe you do your calculations. Oh my God, my property is worth, my tokens are worth $100,000. I might, my calculations are one day in 2 years, my property tokens will be worth $100,000 as well. Who knows? But also maybe Blocksquare token falls down to a cent or less. That is another risk. But again, you didn't buy. So you didn't lose. In the staking process, for that, the way how we tokenize there is we tokenize the value. We do not tokenize in this process yet a corporate resolution, which means that legally binding, you don't have to share revenue with anyone. There is no, that doesn't exist. So you don't enter into this agreement yet that you have to share your revenue with anyone who owns your token, because you still own your own token anyways. The BPST, which is the asset token basically, that stays in your ownership. You're not selling this to anyone. We do have in Blocksquare a feature that if a property owner for some reason would lose access to their property, and they go through an entire process where they verify again. So everyone has to do KYC at the beginning anyways, who tokenizing the assets. So we do have a structure included for that side of the property tokens where we can, after proof, burn the property tokens and issue them into the new wallet of the owner.
Right, okay. And with the staking, what is the percentage staking that is offered? Is it fixed or does it fluctuate on the supply demand?
So every month in Ocean Point, we are releasing 500,000 Blocksquare tokens. So that's set for the next 6 years. And this 500,000 tokens go into the different staking pools. So altogether, when we have fully developed everything out, at the moment we're only at version 2, so our governance pool and our asset pools are open. And however your percentage is in that pools, that is basically what you receive. So at the moment, every month 250,000 in governance, 250,000 in asset. Now, in a week, or like in a couple of weeks, say like that. Cannot announce a fixed date yet. This is when we open our LP staking pool as well. So this is our third pool where we basically then look for more liquidity for Ethereum and BST. On Uniswap, this one we hosted, but then also DAI and BST will come as well in the future. So once this has been launched, then the 500,000 token has to be distributed between 3 pools. So that's where everything is changing. So right now we still have really, really good rates in the other pools, but this will then over time become less and less and less. But at the same time, the pool, our Ocean Point is growing as well. So we see where all of this is heading. We can,
Is there a hard cap on the amount of BST tokens that will ever go into circulation, or will it just increase as new titles come onto the market? Like, how does that work?
100,000 BST. That is what is ever being released in the ecosystem. So BST is our utility token, basically. It's used as rewards, basically. That has nothing to do with the asset tokens. So also the owner, for example, when the owner offers their asset tokens to the market, then they are receiving DAI. And the reason why they're receiving DAI is, imagine you're creating, there's actually quite a few real estate businesses out there in blockchain. They're saying our utility is that you can use our token to purchase properties. Now, how are they going to provide the liquidity for the new tokens? And is it going to be that every single time someone uses that token, that entire token is going to crash? Because actually, the real estate market is much, much, much bigger than the crypto market.
Yep.
So
interesting.
We decided to go with stable coins with high liquidity, and we trust DAI most because
I was going to say,
yeah.
So my next question was going to be around, if you are using a stable coin for that, how do you decipher the risk? Obviously, there's been some questionable practices with more algorithmically pegged stable coins, which is a completely different kettle of fish to one-to-one backed. I know USDT has obviously suffered some questionable challenges at times, but USDC seems quite safe, and BuzzUSD with Binance as well. So how did you land with DAI? What are the benefits that you see using DAI over other stable coins out there?
I think the decision for DAI was done because on the stable coins probably we have most trust in that because it's apparently the most decentralized one. But that decision also wasn't done by me. So that's something we wouldn't ask Dennis. He can probably explain this better. And we also have a partnership with MakerDAO. So that's the reason as well. So there's a connection there as well. So maybe one day the governments of our members, basically the DAO members, vote that they would like to use USDC. That can be as well.
Cool.
We could use that. But right now everything is planned to do with DAI. However, right now in Ocean Point we are not in the stage yet that the real estate. So that would come with version 4. That would be okay. All these properties that have been tokenized, which are currently staking, for example, we have now tokenized 54 properties worth over $50 million. That's in the ecosystem right now on Ocean Point. Let's say now we're saying, all right, we're opening our stable pool, which is version 4, and now you can offer 3%, 4%, 10%, whatever, to the Ocean Point protocol. Now, the Ocean Point protocol has the liquidity in the liquidity pool for real estate, releases it. It does the assessment, basically, if the property is approved for that, if everything is solid and we have actually a head of risk who is developing a risk assessment tool for us at the moment as well, which will be very useful, I think, also for certified partners. So you can basically categorize a little bit where your own risk is hopefully in the investment. It's not done yet, but it's something in the process. And then based on that, we would assess what properties Oceanport Protocol would buy in. And that goes into the stable pool. And now imagine that we don't call it a stable coin because it's not really a stable coin, but what we're trying to create is it is a coin that is backed by the global real estate industry. All the assets that are floating in the ecosystem are then creating a value, and that is the value that coin stands for. So it can fluctuate because the real estate industry is changing as well in value.
But it's a lot more stable. Yeah. So, but it is a form of a more stable asset, which people could invest into, which I like the idea of that. What I really like about cryptocurrencies is the ability, the liquidity to move in and out of a position with a click of a button. And that to me is really exciting and really exciting for real estate. And the last question I've got, I will actually two more questions, but second from last question, I should say. So we spoke about real estate agents, we've spoken about property developers. We've also touched a little bit on if I'm a mum and dad day-to-day property owner. You've outlined some of the benefits already of that. Can you outline anything else that if I am a normal person, normal property owner, apart from being able to offload some of my property if I need some liquidity to further develop, and also rental returns and income as an investor, are there any other property or benefits for property owners with a transition of something like Blocksquare or just blockchain technology, tokenization of property that you can see that we haven't already outlined?
What I found really interesting was going through the process with some of the properties we tokenized. And so we have tokenized some here as well in Western Australia, one in Queensland now as well. So awesome. We've done a couple now for staking all of it at this stage. But what I noticed with almost all of them is you ask them, all right, we need your title deeds. We need this, be that. And these are people that bought the properties years ago, and they never checked their title again. And then they thought, oh my God. Like in one case, we even had someone who owned the property in the company name, looked up the title, looked up the ASIC document, and they're like, oh my God, the company is like, it's not the same name. What happened there? And then they called like their old business partner, and like, oh my God, I think we forgot to renew that company and things like that. So they basically go through their real estate document, and they notice completely forgot to change address, even wrong ownership names on it sometimes, and then we make them basically to do this officially. And then they're giving us the final official documents, basically, that they have to make the changes, otherwise we wouldn't tokenize it with that way. So we are very strict in terms of the information, what we need from them, and the documents basically where they have to be provided in a correct way. So it made them to actually update their details, their own title information with Landgate and so on. So I think that is a good exercise for them to go through that and actually see this before, anything else happens. Yeah.
Well, hopefully with blockchain technology, it'll be a lot more efficient and effective for them going forward in order to go through that process. I prove ownership of the property, therefore I can make the changes that are necessary, obviously, that need to be validated and verified somewhere. But right now, I know the process that those people would have had to go through probably be quite lengthy and consuming to get the outcome they needed rather than a click of a couple of buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I wanted to say that for, I would say, the normal person, it's for the crypto, let's talk about the crypto people who are going into this, because we normally like the volatility of crypto, right? We like the advantages of that. We otherwise, yes, you can, there's the beauty is we have volatile cryptos which are great to trade, and then we have stable coins. And now with assets coming into the game, we can participate in the normal real world valuations of these assets. Now, Ocean Point, and that's different than the marketplaces I was talking with. On a marketplace, you go in, you purchase with DAI or whatsoever, and you receive your rental income in DAI, right? That's your return. You earn your stablecoin basically. But on Ocean Point, this is where we are combining both worlds. This is where we're saying, all right, the protocol now has whatever 100 tokenized properties on it. They are all generating revenue from the rental income. And now the protocol uses that rental income that it receives in DAI and goes back on the market and buys BST. Right. And then uses that BST to distribute it back into the DAO.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's creating an ongoing revenue stream as such. And
exactly, and at the same time as well, imagine in the future, hopefully there will be 100 marketplace operators around the world, and they're all running their real estate business. Now, we don't charge any fees or anything for whatever they're doing at their business. If they do the token offering to the market, they can charge 2% or whatever they want to do for the first sale. That's okay. But now, the platform is getting active and so on, and people start the secondary market trading with their asset tokens. Now, every single time they trade their real estate, then there's a total fee of 1.5% of that. 0.5 goes to the market-based operator, 0.5 goes to the property owner. So it creates another revenue stream for the property owner. Yep. And 0.5 goes back into the Ocean Point protocol. Right. So imagine the engine this could potentially develop over the years, and it all feeds back into the decentralized real estate fund, Ocean Point.
It's an infinite. It's like an infinite positive feedback loop, and an ongoing one.
And it's a DeFi. It's a DeFi platform backed by real assets, right? By real estate, which is, with the examples you mentioned earlier, it wasn't the case. There was no real world backing in terms of there's income coming from real world assets.
Yeah. And just to wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, we've gone into a lot of depth on this chat, which I kind of expected because it is a very new space and there's so much to unpack. Have you got any final kind of comments that you would like to share with anyone that's watching this, that's maybe interested about the fractionalization and tokenization of property into the future? Are there any kind of words of wisdom that you would typically share at any events that you spoke at, or anything that you can think of that you'd like to release before we finish up?
Well, I would say, first of all, as with anything new, start learning, start reading about it. I would like to invite everyone to join our Thursday blog chats, which are also on our YouTube, all recorded. So because for Australian time zone, it isn't the best. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. So, but everything is on YouTube recorded. So that is one thing. There's a lot of learning actually in there, and we know even from other blockchain or real estate tokenization operators from other projects. We know that they actually watch our blog chats as well, because they're like, oh, we have been learning from you guys. That's actually really cool.
It's great.
And so really there's a lot of learning also in our Discord, a lot of learning, like we do learn to earn as well. A lot of activity there. We do so learn about the different ways of tokenization. That's number one. So you understand the differences and you can also, if you're interested to tokenize your real estate, on Ocean Point, for example, we have on Ocean Point FI, we have a form where you can just fill it out, and then you end up, you can book a call with us. So we can have a direct conversation with everyone interested for Ocean Point asset pool. And then also, if anyone wants to operate a Blocksquare marketplace and just wants more information on our Blocksquare website, blocksquare.io, there we have also a form they can fill out, and then we jump on an intro session with them and have just the first conversation, and then they can see if it makes sense for them or not. And then, yes, so it's also like, you know, we discuss what are you planning to do, and then we can also tips and recommendations where we think, you know, might be easier if you would start with this and that business model, for example. So
yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Julia. And I will also share all of that detail. I'll get all of those from you, so I can share it with anyone that's watching or listening to this, because no doubt after this, a lot of cogs are turning for people that are in the industry, and they're thinking, man, that is a great opportunity, that I want to be a first mover on it. Being a first mover, obviously you capitalize a lot on that, but you want to know that you're minimizing your risk, and that's why you go to an incredible company that have already been doing this for a long time. They really understand the market of crypto and the real estate space as well. So thanks so much for your time today, Julia. I know it's been really informative for me. We've certainly gone down the rabbit hole in a number of different ways around property and also the DeFi space as well. So that's been really, really awesome to have. So thanks so much for that. Really appreciate your time. And no doubt we'll have you on again at some point in the future to discuss any further developments when you have them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Next time I bring the whole team.
Sounds good. Take care.
Okay, thank you.